Hey everyone, this is Mr. Storm. In this video, we're going to finish up our Pong project. We're going to finish creating this game and actually have something that we can show off to our friends and family. And I have to admit, our game looks pretty good so far. We have a ball that's moving around in the scene. It can bounce off of the edges of our screen. We have some paddles that can move up and down and interact with the ball. So we're probably 90% of the way there to having a fully functioning Pong game. The last thing we need to do is we just need to figure out how to keep score. Notice that our score is not updating as our ball hits the edges here. So the game's kind of boring. We don't know who's winning. We don't know who's losing. Let's go ahead and change that. So what we want to do is we want to change it so that whenever the ball hits an area behind the paddle, then it actually gives a point to the other player. So to get this to work in our game, we're going to have to create a special invisible areas behind the paddles so that whenever the ball enters that area, we can update the score. So let's create a new node in our scene called an area 2D. So we'll look for area 2D. This is going to allow us to create an area in the game that is just a positional, like just a space that can handle collisions, but it actually won't make things bounce off of, it won't make the ball bounce off of this area, which is great. But this does need a collision shape. So let's add a collision shape 2D to it. Click the plus, collision shape 2D, and give it a rectangle. And now let's actually make it so that it kind of takes up all this space behind our paddle. Perfect. Now that we have that space built, let's rename this to left score area. And let's duplicate it and call it right score area. All right, and we'll move right score area over here so that it is behind the paddle, the player 2 paddle. Perfect. Now that those are built, we actually need to connect these areas to our ball using something called a signal. Signals allow objects to send events to each other and to other objects in the game. So we can send a signal to all of the other objects in the game, and the objects that are set up to receive that signal can do something at that appropriate time. All right, so in this case, we want our left score area and our right score area to send an event signal from our ball, or to our ball, whenever our ball enters one of these areas. So to make this happen, let's go ahead and select the left score area node. And then over here in the inspector, notice that there's another tab next to it called node. Okay. This node has a series of signals that are already built ready for us to use. So we're going to click body entered body node, meaning whenever something enters, whenever a body enters the body of this object, then we're going to fire off a signal. So we'll double click on that and it's going to pull up this menu here. And this menu is going to ask us which object do we want to attach to this function or to this signal. And what we're going to do is we're going to select the ball node because we want the ball to interact with this. We're going to click, and actually it's going to create a new method. We can see the receiver method down here. It says on left score area body entered. We actually like that. That's not a bad idea for the signal. For the method name, let's go ahead and click connect. And what that did was it just created a new function inside of our ball script called func on left score area body entered. What this is going to do is anytime something, the ball essentially passes into that left score area, we want something to happen. Now, to test this out, let's go ahead and type print. And inside this print, let's type, I entered the left area. And what that's going to do is down here in our output, it's going to put a message that says, I enter the left area anytime the ball enters that left area. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and test it out and see if it actually worked. So, wait a second. Notice that it started with a message that says, I entered the left area. But we hadn't already entered the left area. I wonder why that's happening. Well, let's take a look at our game and see if we can figure it out. Let's go back to the 2D view. Well, if we take a look at our collider here, notice that the collider is actually overlapping with other colliders in our scene. Meaning as soon as this game starts, our collider is already touching these other colliders, and it's causing that to fire off as soon as the game starts. So let's go ahead and shrink the collider so that it is no longer touching any other object in the scene. Okay, perfect. And let's do the same with the right score area as well, just so we don't have that same error whenever we set up our right score area. Perfect. Okay. Alrighty. Good times. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, so now that's there. I might even adjust it a bit if we still have the same error, but let's go ahead and play and see if... Now notice we don't get that message popping up, which means we're not firing off that signal until the ball actually enters that area. Perfect. Okay, so now that we have left score area working, we actually need to get the right score area set up. So to do that, let's select our right score area, and we will select the body entered, body node. We'll double click it, make sure we accept the ball, and click connect. So now we have another function on right score area. Let's set this up so it says print. I entered the right area. And let's test it out to see if that signal is working properly. And it is. Look, I entered the right area. I entered the left area. Beautiful. All right. Good. So now we have our signals working properly. But what we want to do is we want to update the actual score whenever those areas were entered by the ball. But we need to connect with this HUD object, or the canvas layer object. And so, let's see how we can actually do that. So the process is actually pretty simple. The issue is we actually don't have a signal that will allow us to do what we want. So we actually need to create our own signals. So at the top of our ball script over here, right underneath of our variables, let's create 2 new signals. And to do that, all you have to do is type the word signal, and we'll say left score and signal right score. So now we have 2 signals that we can emit whenever something happens. And down here in these functions, after our print, let's go ahead and emit those signals. Now, whenever something enters the left score area, that means the right player, or the player 2, has just scored. So we'll emit signal, and it's going to be the right score. All right. And we'll do the same thing down here. We will emit signal left score. So we're going to emit those signals whenever we pass into those areas. Okay, perfect. Now, let's think about this for just a second. We don't want to just update, or we don't want to just send out a signal saying that we want to change the score. We also want to start the game over whenever someone scores. But if we think about it, starting the game over isn't necessarily what we want to do. What we really want to do is just reposition the ball, right? Because we want to keep the score the same. We want to keep everything the same. We just want to put the ball back in the middle of the screen. So an easy way to do that is to go back to our script, and after we emit our signal, we will type position equals vector2, because we're storing two values, specifically a position, and we're going to go to 512, which is halfway across the screen, and we're going to go to 300, which is halfway up and down the screen. And we can tell that by going to our project settings, going to our general, and go to window, and see that our screen size is, let me try to, our width is 1024, 512 is half of 1024, and our height is 600, 300 is half of 600. All right, let's go ahead and copy and paste this so that we have that working. Let's test that out and make sure our ball actually goes back to the center of the screen. And it does. Okay. Let's get it to bounce. There we go. Perfect. And it keeps the same directional value, which is nice, so that we're not always starting going in the same direction. All right, beautiful. That is our entire ball script completely finished and locked off, done and done. Now we just need to update the user interface or the HUD so that our score can change whenever that signal is received. All right, so in order for the HUD to accept those signals, it actually needs a script. So let's go ahead and create a new script on this canvas layer HUD object. We'll click the plus button, make sure that it's an empty template, and click create. All right. Now, before we begin sending signals to this script, let's make sure we can change the value of our player 1 score and player 2 score. So to do this, we need to create a couple of new variables, one called player 1 score, so var p1 score. And let's set that to something different from 0, just so that we can see that it's different. And we'll actually make these strings so that we can, no, we'll just make it a number. We don't need to make it a string. So we'll just make it a number, 07, and var p2 score, we'll set that to 22. Okay, perfect. And then at the beginning of the game, we want to change the text of the labels in the P1 score and P2 score labels. We want to change the text value. So this text value to be whatever this P1 score, P2 score is. So at the beginning of the game, that tells me that I want to use what's called the ready function. If you remember back a while ago, we used the ready function to set some initial values. So func underscore ready. And this is going to fire off as soon as this game object exists within the game. Okay, now we need to access the player 1 score object that is a child of this canvas layer. So to access children, you use the $sign keyword or the keystroke $sign, and then we'll type the name of the object, or we can select it from this menu here. So P1 score. Oh, hello. That was weird. I don't know what happened there. P1 score. There we go. All right, $sign P1 score. And we want to change the text to be equal to a string P1 score with a lowercase because we're grabbing the variable. All right. And we're going to do the same thing for P2 score. P2 score text string P2 score. Okay, now if we test our game, we should see our, instead of 0, 0, we should have 7 and 22. which we do. Perfect. So we can actually see that we can update that with text. Now, anytime we want to update the value of that text, all we need is to access p1score.text and change it to whatever we want. Okay, so knowing how to do that, all we really have to do now is we have to basically set up the signal to work with this canvas layer. All right. Let's see. Let's go ahead and set our variables back to 0 first so that we don't start the game with a crazy weird score. And now let's set up the signals. So let's select the ball node. Okay. And let's go to the node tab. And let's choose the left score signal and double click it. And now we want to associate it with the canvas layer. And it's going to create a new function called onBallLeftScore. Inside of there, we want to change this to be P1 score. And we're going to do this plus equals 1. What that does is it takes the value of P1 score and adds 1 to it. Now, the only other thing we have to do is we have to call our ready function again so that it actually updates these string values. Okay. Now, the only other thing we have to do is basically do that again, but for the right side. So we'll go over here, right score, connect to the canvas layer. And in here, we're going to change P2 score plus equals 1. And we are going to call our ready function. All right, now, if we've done everything correctly, this game should work perfectly. Let's go ahead and test it and see what happens. All right, game still works. Let's let the right player. Oh, hey, there we go. And beautiful. Okay, so our score is updating accurately. That's fantastic. All right. Now, is this a perfect Pong game? Of course not. It's definitely not perfect. There are some things that we can do to like update it and make it a little bit better. For example, whenever we reset our position, we can actually create a wait here that will make it so that the ball doesn't automatically just spit out right away. That's something we can do. We could also set a score limit so that whenever a score limit is reached, then the game is over and we have to restart the game. We can add a main menu. We can add all kinds of stuff to it. We can make the ball move faster as the game goes on, whatever we want to do. There's a lot of things we can do to make this different. But for right now, we have a functioning game that actually keeps an accurate score, allows you to play 2 players. I'm pretty happy with how this project has turned out so far. So I'm going to call this project finished. You can add on to it if you'd like and add some of those changes that I just described. But if you've gotten this far, you've made a perfectly functional Pong game using only 3 scripts and a handful of objects. So we've made a very fun game, but the most basic game that you can make in Godot. Thank you for sticking with me throughout this whole series. I appreciate your attention, and I hope you make some cool stuff in the future. All right, I'll see you next time. Bye.